Hey everybody, welcome to the Married People Podcast, where we want to make marriage real, fun, and simple. This week, we're discussing the question, how can we be great parent-in-laws? I'm CJ, and I'm really excited about this week's conversation. Now, if you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you'll know that in a previous episode, we had a great conversation about how to have a great relationship with your in-laws. That was actually episode 37, so you could check that out. But this episode is kind of the other side of that conversation, and it's about how you can be a great in-law. Now, today you're going to hear from Jana and Stephen Guynn. Jana and Stephen have been married for 27 years. They have 2 adult children, Dalton and Quincy. And Dalton has been married for just a couple of years. Quincy just got engaged. So the Gwynns have a lot going on. And on top of that, they've actually been marriage mentors to our co-hosts Ted and Nancy Lowe for the past 15 years. All that marriage expertise that Ted usually brings to the table, well, he got a lot of that from the Gwynns. So which is why this interview is going to be really cool. So Ted actually interviewed the Gwynns about how they've navigated the new world of being parents-in-law, and you're going to get a lot out of what they had to say. So let's just jump right in now to their conversation with Ted.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Married People Podcast. My name is Ted Lowe, and today I'm so excited. I am with my buddies Jana and Stephen Guynn, who I've known for a really, really long time. I won't date any of us, but let's just say we've gone through several presidents together as friends. Jana and I worked together in North Point Church for many years, right, Jana?
That's right. Many years. I've learned at the feet of the master about marriage.
Oh, gosh. We were all stumbling in the dark, trying to figure that out. We do marriage events a lot at North Point and have a great time with that. And Jana has remained influential in Married People and helping us process that. And also Stephen Guynn, who settles everybody's nerves, all the chihuahuas,
I've
right?
always told you, when you got me, you got the better half of me as well. So,
That's a lot to live up to, you all.
Well, it would be so great. So, Jana and I'd be all nervous and anxious about the events, and I'd be in the back trying to practice my talk, and Stephen would come in and go, "Sit down, Ted, just sit down."
That's right.
Okay. I'm going to pray for you. And then it would be like, okay, now I'm all settled in. So, you spoke into married people early on, didn't you, friend?
Yeah. We talked about married people. I don't remember what year it was. We were in Romania on a trip with North Point.
Yeah, probably 2007 or 8.
Yeah, that was a while back.
Pour into marriages in Romania.
Yeah, and I remember having a conversation with you. And hearing a vision, hearing this desire to come out of you, and to sit here today to see where Married People is, it's amazing. It's obviously taken on a life of its own. You are living your passion, and it is so cool to see it happening.
Well, I tell you, you guys have been so influential, not only towards ministry, but also to us personally. You guys are a little bit down the road in terms of your kids being older, and we're going to talk about how to be great parent-in-laws in just a second. But when we met, you guys had teenagers, right? And then
Middle schoolers, really. Yeah, I guess. So
it was
middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys were a little head down the road, so we could call and say, okay, what about this? How do you handle this? How do you deal with that? And so it's been so huge to us. And we call you guys our 3 o'clock in the morning friends.
We have unfortunately had a couple of those.
Yes. Yep.
But we've been through things together, my friend.
Watch me it's too early to get this misty. But if I think about it, I will.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for that. And thank you for being on the podcast today. I can't wait for people to dive in.
Our first podcast.
It is.
Yes.
We're very excited about it.
I love it. Well, first of all, introduce yourselves a little bit. We were talking a little bit before the podcast started, the differences of you two.
Yes.
So how long have you been married? Tell us about your kids, all that good stuff.
We'll be married 27 years on August 30th.
Nice.
31st.
31st. I can't believe I just messed that up. Hey, I'm the high yellow in the relationship. If you know anything about temperaments, I'm the spontaneous, outgoing, energetic, tend to get details wrong.
And I'm the detailist.
That's right. And I married a detailist, which is God's way of saving me these past years. But we've got 2 great kids. We've got 25-year-old son and named Dalton. We have a 23-year-old daughter named Quincy. Mm-hmm. Dalton's been married for 2 years to the love of his life, the sweet Emily Guynn. And Quincy just got engaged over the weekend to her high school sweetheart, Tyler Johnson.
Yeah.
So hashtag Q ties the knot is what we're experiencing right now.
And I am sure that it will be an affair. Knowing Quincy, I think
yes.
I think she had like the world's best dorm room, right? Wasn't that like the deal?
Yeah, the
it was
girl.
pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. She loves to decorate. She loves to party plan, and
This
they
is
have
right up her
so
alley.
many sorority and fraternity friends from UGA that it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be something.
It's going to be a big affair. So, talk a little bit about what you guys do professionally.
So I work for a local IT company. I am it's not sexy at all, but I'm a proposal response manager.
A proposal
Response manager.
Say it one more time, baby.
We get bids from our clients who like for us to put together projects and whatnot, and we compete through the proposal process. And up until about 4 years ago, I was in IT sales. I was not wired for it at all. I don't take rejection well, and unfortunately, you have to have pretty thick skin in sales. And God just opened this door up. I'm with the same company. I've been there for a little over 18 years, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing for a change. It's really cool. And as a result, I've learned skills that I didn't know that I had. Some leadership skills in pulling teams together and developing solutions. So I really have kind of discovered a new hidden person inside, which is really cool.
Stephen's a stealthy pastor. He's a stealthy pastor to the people he works with. He loves on them. He cares for them. He's fantastic at customer service.
Thanks.
You know what I've loved about you guys for years is how you talk so well about each other in front of other people. You guys champion each other. And we talk about on this podcast, we want to make marriage real, fun, and simple. And I think what I've loved is the simplicity of you guys are each other's biggest cheerleader, not only privately, which is so important, obviously, but publicly. I just think that model is such a great thing.
And we are flawed. Don't get us wrong. We're flawed in our marriage, and it hasn't always been like that. But I feel like in the last several years, after some struggles, within the last few years or so, I feel like we really have stepped into truly being each other's cheerleaders. Life has gotten much simpler in many ways, of downsizing our home, watching our kids who are now fully grown and they're eating warm food and living indoors, and
they're off our payroll is what he's trying to say. Hallelujah.
What does that feel like? Speak to those of us who've just started one in college with two to follow.
It is the best feeling in the world when your kids are employed, take care of themselves, are working in the groove that God has created them to work in, and you just we literally will high five each other every now and again and just be like, praises be to God, because they're sometimes there, but for the grace of God.
In spite of us.
Yeah, in spite of us, it happened.
They turned out well.
No.
Other ways we were pretty purposeful about not raising kids. We were raising them to be fully functioning adults at an early age.
Okay, one of my favorite things about Jana is her kids were younger and they would get hurt at school or whatever. Quincy was a cheerleader, and it seemed like she was always hurting herself way more than football.
She was always being dropped from a high space.
Jana would go take them, they would set a bone, she'd come back to work, and I go, that's already done? Yeah, I sent her back to school. I'm like, wow, that's hardcore. But you guys you raised adults. You did not. Yeah. You did not coddle.
No.
And they are both strong.
They are both strong individuals.
I think we
especially Quincy.
A lot of our parenting, we had us as people like us. Where you're concerned, we had people like us in our lives.
Yeah, true.
That had been around the block a few more times, that had advice, that weren't afraid to talk about their mistakes. You know, so it was nice to be able to go to those people and get advice, because I don't know that we struggled, we made mistakes, and in spite of us, I think I look back, our kids are happy, they like coming back to our house and hanging out with us. They love hanging out with each other. So I feel like it was a win all the way around.
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
I love it. Jana, talk a little bit about what's your day job now that kids are all responsible with their jobs.
Yeah. Now I've been with North Point Ministries for 15 years. Wow. I know, crazy. Most of it working in marriage ministry or production, producing main services at North Point and now at Gwinnett. I've been at Gwinnett Church with Jeff Henderson and Lauren Espy for about a year, and have recently taken on some duties to shepherd the people that get baptized at Gwinnett as well, to sort of pull all that under our service programming division and make that more a part of the flow of our services.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to dive in just a second about the parent-in-law thing, but one of the things, I almost wanted to do an entire episode on this. So, John and Stephen, before you moved, you lived, a mile away from here. You had the largest house. It
Had the family house.
It was a big house, big family house.
Basement for the kids to hang out in. Yeah.
Big old house. And just radically downsized.
Yes.
But I showed up there and I was like, oh, these guys are brilliant because it's a smaller place, but it's a beautiful place. And the view, holy smokes, of the water, of the lake. And you guys are out there in the kayaks. And I mean, you really, really downsized, like two bedrooms, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we went from 5 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms, an office, a basement. We literally got rid of 2/3 of everything that we owned. And it was the most freeing thing we have ever done.
Was it tough? Was it tough to
For me,
Not
it was
for
tough.
me.
Yeah, for me, it was tough. I'm convinced that if I wasn't still in the marriage, Jana would have gotten rid of me at some point. But
I almost marked him and put him to Goodwill.
I was half
honestly.
price
I was like,
or
wait,
something. Yeah, it was difficult for me because I didn't realize it. It was a kind of a life lesson. I didn't realize how much I identified myself with what I had. And to get rid of so much stuff, I felt like I was getting rid of some of myself. But like Jana says, it was liberating. It's freeing not to have all the stuff.
Yeah. No, and I'm very oh, we don't need it. Give it away. Let's throw it out. Let's bless people. Let's give them everything that we don't need. But I'm not going to lie. In the last year, there have been a few times where I'm like, where is that?
Yeah.
Oh, I gave that away. Didn't I? So, I mean, it's come back to bite me a couple times. But it's freed us up to live our life. There's no yard to maintain. There's no big house to maintain. It takes us 30 minutes to clean our little condo, and then we hit the kayaks and head out on the lake, or we just lay on the porch and watch good old SEC football. We just live life, and it's made us better for each other in this empty nesting season.
Yep.
Well, and the space you guys have created, while it's not a huge place, the way it's laid out, you can have lots of people over there. The big, huge deck on the back. You guys seems like you were so intentional about making the larger spaces the ones that people are going to hang out. So, because I know you said, hey, we still want people to come over, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I still need a big old kitchen counter for my mama to come out and roll out dumplings and, good things like that. So it has a flow to it that we can have 10, 15 people there and it doesn't feel crowded, which is good.
I think it's awesome. I feel closest to God in nature. That's just where he and I meet. And to be able to sit out there and look over the lake and whatnot, it is very freeing. But at the same time, to invite people to come over and just sit and enjoy and to be quiet, to be still, or just to laugh, whatever. It's really a great environment just to induce relationship.
We're big fans of downsizing, really.
I like that. So, all right. So we're going to dive into our topic today. And the question is, how can we be great parent-in-laws? So you guys are new to this whole parent-in-law thing, but I've watched you guys. It feels like you've built relationships before they were married. Seems like you guys have spent time with them. It seems like you guys are very intentional about having fun and hanging out. But talk a little bit about, why do you think it's difficult for people to be great parent-in-laws?
I think it boils down to trust. You have to trust that you have raised your children well enough to pick a great spouse, to pick a great person that they're dating. And like you said, we have been really purposeful. From the minute that they started to date, we would invite that person into our family. We would have a lot of family time together. We really believe that if God has put this teenage kid in our family life for a season, then we're going to love on them as best we can, and he's going to leave our family when they break up, or she's going to leave our family when they break up, and be a better person because we've been able to love on them. So we've been really intentional about creating just an easy space to hang out. But that's because you've got to trust your kid to know their worth in Christ. You've got to trust them to value themselves enough that they choose a really good person to bring into your world.
Yeah, I've heard Jana say, I wish I had $1 for every time Jana said this when our kids were growing up, that God has a plan and a purpose for you, to our kids. And even today in my lay ministry, that is a phrase that I use over and over again. God has a plan and a purpose for you. And I think in instilling that God has a plan and a purpose for you, it causes your kids to recognize that it's not just about my little box, it's not just about my little world, that there's something more out there for me to do. And to point them toward that. As parents, again, hindsight's always 20/20, so we didn't really know about this until after we'd gone through it. But to recognize the talents, gifts, and abilities that your kids have, and to kind of point them in that direction, I think is helpful in helping your children to know who they are, and more importantly, whose they are. And as Christian parents, obviously, we raised our family with Christian values. So that was a purposeful conversation that we would have with our children growing up. I think later in life, in late middle school, early high school, by that time, hopefully your kids have a sense of who they are and whose they are. And they're beginning to, in high school, beginning to step into that role of moving away from mom and dad and becoming more independent, being able to make wise choices and those types of things, so that eventually when they do get into that serious relationship, they can step into that clearly.
How did you guys talk to your kids about their future spouse as they were growing up?
I think one important thing that I've seen play out now in Dalton as an adult was something that he was struggling with as a child. And he was a very sensitive kid. Like, he was our firstborn, he was athletic, but he was also a sensitive kid. And we used to just pray over him and pray with him every night and thank God for the sensitive heart that he gave him, because I think he thought as a boy, as a kid, like, he shouldn't maybe have that sensitive heart. And we kept speaking this truth over him that we are so excited, God, that one day you are going to use that sensitive heart and he is going to be an amazing husband and he is going to be such a great caretaker of his wife. And it's so neat now to see him on the other side. He loves Emily so dearly and sweetly, but he writes her songs and, he's very verbal and pours that sensitive heart into things that make her feel loved and appreciated and special.
Yep. I know we're kind of talking about parenting now, but it just, in my opinion, as you parent and lead your children to that place of purpose, knowing who they are, whose they are, you eventually set them up for success to help us, Jana and I, to be great in-laws, because they're going to potentially attract that right person into their lives. And it starts early. Now, I know there's probably people listening to this that are wondering, okay, well, my children are grown. What do we do with that? Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But
so what do you guys think the challenges are? And we're going to jump into some answers in just a little bit. But what do you think some of the challenges that people may have? If somebody's looking at this podcast saying, I want to be a great parent-in-law, right? What are the challenges that some of them may have Googled this to find this because they're struggling with something? Because we found, a lot of times in the marriage space, people don't want the information until they need the information.
Sure.
So I imagine that a lot of people are driving down the road right now, or they're exercising, saying, hey, we're struggling here. We're struggling. What are some of the struggles that you guys would resonate with?
I think one of the things, if you have a strained relationship with somebody that your child is married to, is you really have to own your own part in it, or you don't have a great talking relationship with who your child is dating. If you feel formal with them, like, you have to own your own part of it. And I think you have to decide, like, as a parent, you can always be a benevolent dictator, but as an in-law, you just have to be benevolent. Like, you really
That's great. Say that again.
So as a parent, I know we've said it many times, like, you can be a benevolent dictator, but as an in-law, you really should only be benevolent. You have to want the best for that person. You have to give the best explanation for that person's behavior. We've talked about this in marriages a lot. Like, give the most generous explanation for that person's behavior, and then believe it.
So you guys are not obviously not meaning, hey, we can still dictate what our son and daughter are doing. You're talking when they're growing up, right?
So yeah, when they're adults, and for us, that's when they went off to college, and really probably the year before, we sort of took more an advisory role. We started releasing the margins and the freedoms around them so that when they did mess up, when they did make a mistake, they were home with us and we could sort of walk them through the consequences of that. We always let them experience the consequences of when they messed up. We didn't clean things up for them. We made them go through it like, hey, this is what it feels like on the other side when you mess up. And it's important to let them fail and then help them figure out how to move forward out of that failure. What I mean by benevolent dictator is when you're raising your children, you are in charge of their schedules, of where they spend their time. I can check their phone. I can see who they're hanging out with. So I can speak into that situation. When they are then adults, you just become benevolent. You just become, you love on them. If they're in college, I'm not checking their phone. I'm looking at who they're hanging out with. I'm checking Instagram or whatever is, the social media of the day. But I'm in an advisory role by that point. As adults with jobs, I am looking at what they're doing. And if I'm asked, we will speak into their life situations. But if we're not asked, then we don't speak into it.
Which is probably healthy from an in-law perspective, right? That there's not another voice coming into Dalton and Quincy's head that's competing with their spouse's head, maybe.
Yeah, I think you also have to take into consideration that you have two, for lack of a better word, strangers. They're meeting together and creating a relationship together. And you don't know what necessarily your in-law, your child-in-law might be bringing into the marriage, into the relationship. There may be something bigger going on if there's a strain, and it may not be all about you, the parent. It may be something going on the other side of your child-in-law that needs to be looked at. So the potential there is to try to figure out at the heart what's going on at the heart of the issue. Because typically, if it's a strained relationship, those happen in episodes periodically, I guess. I think you have to look into those episodes to try to figure out what's going on deeper, and try to love into that if you can.
So kind of having those moments with your son or daughter-in-law, and you're like, wow, this reaction's not matching the situation right now. Yeah. There's probably something deeper. Yeah. That takes a high level of maturity, I think, as parents, because that's got to feel so personal, right? Because they're your kids, and like, wow, this is the last thing I wanted is to have conflict with my son and daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
And we've really raised our kids to, like Dalton, his first thought should always be for Emily. Quincy's first thought should always be for Ty. It should not be for us or what we think. They should go to them first with their good news, with their hurts, with their things that they're afraid of. We as in-laws always need to take the low place and take the back seat. We want to be the easy in-laws, like Christmas on December 20th, fantastic. If we can make that happen, great. December 29th, whatever. We really want to be the ones that make things easy for them.
That's powerful, you guys. That's powerful. So we're talking about how to be great parent-in-law, and you're saying, hey, to your kids, you tell your spouse first. I mean, that's powerful. Because that can cause strain, going, oh, you told your mom or dad this before you told me? That could be heartbreaking for a new bride or a new groom, right?
Absolutely. Especially, I think, for newlyweds. One of the things we love about our future son-in-law is our daughter works downtown Atlanta, and sometimes she doesn't get off work until late at night, and it's 10 o'clock, and she's walking to her car. There's a security guard following along with her, but she calls Ty and is on the phone with him so that he knows when she's in her car, when she's heading back to her apartment. She's not calling us. Now, she might call us if Ty's not home, or doesn't pick up the phone or something, but she's leaning on him for the emotional support for everything.
I think one of the things that we learned early on in our marriage, unfortunately, Jana married a mama's boy, and I didn't recognize it because that was my normal. Every family has their normal.
Sure.
So when I first married Jana, I was still unfortunately a mama's boy, and the life lesson that we learned, as Jana just spoke about, was how important it is to go to your spouse first, before going to a parent. And the thing that happens there is Jana felt, as she should have, second best, second rate, second in the relationship. And that's not how it should have been. But I was blind to it, unfortunately. So I think the challenge there is to raise your child, and at some point they need to, that whole leaving and cleaving thing, it needs to be encouraged by parents.
And let them go.
You know?
Should be Frozen Part 2. Let them go. Go on their way.
Let them go. And that's a great point. And I think a lot of people listening, we didn't have these things modeled for us. So how would we know? Mm-hmm. We don't know what's, like you said, it's your normal. Mm-hmm. So I love the idea that people listen to the podcast or listen to different things and they go, oh, I heard this principle that I need to go there first. Then you go, oh, didn't know it, now I do. It becomes simple, right? Real fun and simple. You guys made a great point, and I don't want us to lose it, is we want to be the easy ones. We want to be the easy in-laws.
Yes.
That is so powerful because, it's such a struggle for you get together and you go, now what? And I think for a lot of people, it feels like it's what blended families go through a lot. Now that we're together, who gets Christmas? Who gets this holiday? And I can't imagine now we've gotten married and it's been a blended family. Now I've got 2 different sets of families to go there. So to have the one that's just going to go, all right, we're going to be the easy one.
Yeah.
Why do you think people don't take that route? Why are people not the easy one?
I think people are inherently selfish. I mean, I am.
I am too.
It's something we battle all the time in our fight for oneness in our own marriage. You're selfish. You want to feel good. You want your needs met first. And it's something that as a really good in-law, I think you have to continually keep putting yourself in your own place. Because I would much rather put myself in my place than my son have to sit me down and say, hey, you've offended my wife, or you made this a tough situation for my wife. I don't ever want to put him in that position. And I don't ever want to purposefully or unpurposefully hurt her feelings.
One of the things I've watched you guys do that I think is sort of unique is it seems like you've been very intentional about putting your families together. You guys actually, the thing with Emily and Dalton, Emily's parents were your best friends, right?
Well, great friends. We were in small group with them. When the kids were in middle school, we're just in this great small group. We meet Chuck and Robin Pitts. They're amazing people. We start praying for each other's kids when they were like in 7th and 8th grade. Fast forward, 10 years later, and I get a call from Dalton going, hey, I'm off working this camp and I've got mono. You need to come pick me up. I go pick him up. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to need to get flowers for somebody. And I'm like, who have you been making out with? Like, who have you passed mono on to? And he's like, Emily Pitts. And I said, our Emily Pitts? Like, how do you know our Emily? Because we've been friends with Chuck and Robin for years. And we lived in neighborhoods across the street. They went to high school together. They carpooled to high school together, but never spoke. She was a year older and, a cheerleader. He was just this lacrosse bro. And they met up as interns in our middle school ministry at one of our churches. And it was like God's perfect timing. Mm-hmm. So we were all 4 of us thrilled, but also like, okay, let's just treat each other and this situation when they break up. It's all going to be good. So you better be good to her. And because we love Chuck and Robin, we don't want to lose that influence in their life. And then they never broke up, which was great. Yeah. And then with our daughter, she met her fiance on a high school mission trip. And so we started getting to know his parents, all the while thinking, high school romance isn't going to last. He went off to UGA. She followed a year later. Surely they'll break up in college. They never did. We took him on a mission trip with us to South Africa. Like, we've always just made him a part of our family. And because of that, Sam and Lisa have always invited us into their life. And we've just been good to each other and friends with each other.
Yeah, we just get along.
Which I think is so powerful, because when the in-laws don't connect and they don't know each
Right.
other, or maybe live in different states and different things.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not people. They're this entity that's keeping my kid from me, or that I'm competing with, that I don't even know. So I think,
Yes.
you guys have made great relationships with
I
them.
think
It's been helpful.
that's the challenge in our marriage, because Jana's mom is up in North Carolina and my family's here, and my mom and dad would just occasionally call up there to say hey, and vice versa. So they do try to stay in touch with each other.
Yeah, but early in our marriage, my parents lived in Ohio. We were in Virginia. Stephen's parents were in Georgia. And they were very different people. And we didn't have a lot of family gatherings together.
Right.
And so we always felt pulled in one direction or another for holidays or something like that. And that was something we were determined we were not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
We're not going to be, yep.
We're going to be the easy set.
I love
we're
that.
Going to be easy.
We're going to be the easy set. So what about people that are listening right now? Some of them are strained. I mean, you guys have been in the marriage space for a while, been pastoring people, like you said, lay pastor. What would you say right now? Somebody's listening to this and they said, I just had a very uncomfortable interaction with my son-in-law or daughter-in-law. How do I help mend that? What do I do in that situation? And talk to two different situations. Talk to the one where it was your fault, and for the one like Stephen was talking about earlier, no, this was kind of their fault. There must be something underlying.
I would say if it's your fault, then you have to be the one that goes to them to repair the situation. You have to say, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. You need to own your responsibility in it. And then you really need to be purposeful about treating them better than you treat your own child. And I think this is a principle that we try and live out in good situations, because we really haven't had bad interactions yet, but life happens. But I always try and treat Emily better than I treat Dalton. If I'm gonna go shopping, I'll take her out shopping. I'll take and just for her and not buy anything for him. Or I'll take her to lunch and not invite him. She loves my child with her whole heart. So why wouldn't I try and do everything that I can to be supportive of her and just to love on her and to make their marriage easier?
Oh, I love that. And that's what a great gift for Dalton. Like, because if I had to pick where mom's going to bring me back some, a polo shirt, or you're going to treat my wife with such care and generosity, I love that.
The sweetest hugs I've gotten from him, honestly, have been, he's tall, he's like 6'1". So he'll bend down and give me a bear hug and say, thank you for what you did for Emily. Thank you for taking her shopping. I mean, that's all I want as a mom.
Yep.
It's
so powerful. So powerful. Stephen, what do you think?
I think, again, talking about the other side of it, it is difficult, and as you said earlier, it does require some maturity on the parents' part to take a step back and realize that it's not necessarily you. It may be you, but there may be something deeper going on. There is a wound or a broken place that your child-in-law may be trying to manage, to control a source of shame. It could be whatever, and you're poking, without realizing you may be poking a wound. Is the conversation, the difficult opportunity, the challenge there, is that more important than the relationship? And I would say speak into that relationship beyond the wound, look beyond the episode, the difficulty, whatever. And if you can, just ask questions.
Love that.
Loving questions, non-invasive questions, but just ask questions to nurture potentially a relationship. And there may be pushback, because trust has to be built.
I love that. I love that. So each week we give people on the podcast one simple thing based on the principle that we talked about. Again, we want to make marriage real fun and simple, but what is one thing that any parent-in-law could do this week that would make that relationship a better one?
I'll actually go first on this one. I think you have to remember that you're not only gaining an in-law, but you're potentially gaining a son or a daughter. and to treat them like that. And that may be new territory for them. They may not feel the same type of love that they get from their parents growing up. So you potentially gain a son or daughter, and you have the opportunity to love them like that. The second thing is, like Jana said, you potentially gain a source of joy. Emily is she is the epitome of joy when you see her smile, when you see her around our son. And again, a lot of that comes from upbringing. So I think the dream here, the challenge here is you want to see your child happy. They married this person for a reason. Jump on the train with them. Figure it out and learn how to potentially love them as a son or daughter.
I think I've already said part of mine, but we have a family life verse. We've had it printed, and we've given it to each of our children for them to hang in their house, and that's Galatians 5:6. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. So the easiest thing, the simple, fun takeaway for you is to love that child. Once they come into our family, we treat them as a child, not as an in-law. So I'm going to love Emily as best as I can. I'm going to love Tyler as best as I can. And that's knowing what they love. Yeah. So find out things that are fun for them to do.
Love it.
Find out Ty loves socks. So, I'll just occasionally get him a really fun, cool pair of socks. Think about them as you would your own child, and then love them that way. But again, put them ahead of your child. That's a good way to start establishing that, to really try and think of them and their needs before your own child's needs.
I love it. You guys, so helpful. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
We love married people.
Well, we love that you love married people. We do. And I'm so excited that you guys were able to do this. I think you've, just in a way of wrap up, I've watched you say to your kids, God has a purpose and a plan for you, which includes a person. Yes. That God's going to put that person. I think you guys were very healthy to say, hey, we're going to bring people in knowing that they're going to go out of our lives. John, I know there was a couple of times you guys got really fond of people and out the door they would go. You go, okay, I'm grieving the breakup more than my kid, but that's okay because we're going to let God do what God's going to do. And then I'm watching you now have relationships, continued great, healthy relationships with your kids and their spouse and also their families.
And their families.
And just that, it's such a great thing to watch that you guys do spend a lot of time, but yet there's these clear boundaries.
I was going to say probably one of the best things that we have ever seen result from that. The dream of this, of being good in-laws, was this past weekend when our daughter got engaged, and his parents and us and Dalton and Emily, because he's an only child, we encircled Ty and Quincy and prayed for them as a family together, joined together. I mean, if that's not the dream for your kids, that when they choose their life mate, that you're all there to love on them, to celebrate them, you give them words of life, and they become rooted in a God who has a plan and purpose for them, and then they walk in that plan and purpose. It's just the best.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm sitting with my friends that are down the road, right? And what you've done for me once again is painted a picture of, as we move into this phase, having an 18-year-old, and who knows, we'll blink.
That's right. It goes
but thank
by
you
in
for
a flash.
It goes by in a flash. Thanks for you guys for casting that vision and that model. And I think a lot of people learned some stuff today. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Love you, Ted.
Love you guys.
We hope that you enjoyed this week's episode of the Married People Podcast. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. That review will help us reach more people with this podcast. And if you want more marriage resources, check out our website, marriedpeople.org. Until next time, thanks for listening.